Hello, folks. Welcome back to English 102. Um, so, as promised, I wanted to do a little video lecture on essay number 1, in part because, it's the first essay, but also I kind of want you guys to understand my expectations and, basically kind of get a handle on the whole assignment, which is due the September 27th, you can see here. In the module itself, that is module 3 in Canvas, you just simply need to follow the steps and follow them thoroughly. So all of this information here, module 3, is available in our Canvas. If you just, click the module, then go down to module 3. All of these links here are included along with the submission directions. I will include another step here in the directions, which is a link to this video lecture, so you can watch or rewatch it as necessary. Remember that in the Home tab of our course, if you click this link to our Google Drive, you get all of the documents and files and resources and whatnot that I'm going to be using, not just in this essay, but throughout the course. So, it's here broken down into folders. You can change up here with this toggle switch in the Google Drive from a grid to a list view. So I will be discussing files in this folder of essay 1 here. So I'll use them on my laptop because it's simply easier to navigate. And I won't go through every single file and image, but any of these images and or files are certainly fair game for you to use as sources in your paper, whether you paraphrase or quote them or borrow images or whatnot. Okay, so let me just sign out of Canvas here. All right, just as some background, this is a topic I've been teaching in different ways in different courses for a long time, even before I came to Grambling. It's been a while since I taught this comparative lit course with the topic of racial others and justice. You can see here from the image of, eraseism, nice little pun there, that it focuses, in this case, this course on texts that deal directly with racism, both its history and its ongoing kind of appearance. So this novel here by Ya Gyasi, if you guys want a great novel to read, it's beautifully written and just pretty powerful. It's set in both Ghana in the past, but also the South and even in the present US. It's a kind of long braided narrative. Then, I would discuss with my students the problems in India with what are called the untouchables or the Dalits in their caste system. That is, internally in India, there's a kind of racial and ethnic ostracization. Or we'd switch gears to the Mexican Revolution of the early 19th century, early 20th century, early 1900s, in which indigenous peoples were largely fighting against Spanish colonial rule to try to regain their independence. And then this pretty powerful novel by Jesmyn Ward, who last I heard she still teaches at Tulane in New Orleans, but it is originally from Mississippi, and it's about a single mother and the days leading up before Katrina, and it's just wonderful read, but also, again, pretty powerful. So along with those texts, I would screen these films here of, say, Rabbit Proof Fence set in Australia about the basic systematic oppression and breeding out, literally and figuratively, of the Aboriginal natives in Australia, or this film about immigrant people in Britain from all over, from Africa, from Europe, from the Middle East, and the things that they have to endure. So again, this topic of, racial others and justice, or as I've construed it for our essay, erasing racial injustice, is kind of important to me, and hope it is to you. So on this guide, which is the first, if you go to the module, right, it says, choose a topic from this guide, right? On this guide, the first page is the outline I want you to follow. It clearly says, follow this outline. So folks, I'm expecting you to have right here this entire outline in your paper, regardless of which topic you choose. You'll have an introductory paragraph. You can open that paragraph with a quotation, a statistic, or an anecdote. An anecdote, not to be confused with antidote, like, snake bite venom, antidote remedy. An anecdote is a brief story or narrative, and it can be a personal one, or one that you may have overheard of or know about. And then before you close your introductory paragraph, you need to clearly state your thesis, which is a combination of your topic. So one of these topics on the second page, I'll look at a couple of these in a minute, and your point of view. And your point of view is simply, we should or should not do something. So notice that virtually all of these topics begin with the word should, which then requires you as the writer to answer that question, we should or we should not, or we should to a certain degree. If you remember your What is Rhetoric video lecture, if you actually watch that, or the logical fallacies, there's pretty much always, more than one side of an answer, or issues. So it's not yes or no. It's often, well, it depends, or maybe. So there's a third or fourth possible answer. But you definitely need to answer the question. You can't skirt around it. And you certainly don't want to, in your essay, in the final paragraph, in the conclusion, and say, and I've given you all the evidence on this side and that side, and therefore you, the reader, decide. No, that is not arguing or persuading. That's leaving the entire issue up to the reader. And what you are supposed to do, because remember, all of these essays are argumentative or persuasive, is you are with evidence and data, facts, right? So example, fact, quotation, example, fact, quotation in your main body paragraphs, right? You are supposed to be convincing your reader that your side is better than they thought, or the actual right way to think. So, and by the way, remember, this is just an outline. Do not write, Roman numeral 1, introduction, and then your paragraph. It's simply, again, a kind of skeletal structure for you to follow. So your paper should look like this. And this is linked to right here where it says follow this MLA style sample paper when formatting your essay. So, you should have your surname up here with the page number. Speaking of which, I should probably show you how to do that, because some of you are maybe not as familiar with Word, though it really is the kind of industry and professional standard now. Inserting the page number is very simple. And I'm working on whenever this word decides to load, I'm working on a Mac laptop. So my interface, if you will look slightly different than, say, if you're working on a, HP or Dell or PC computer. But the commands are basically the same in Word. So you always want to open a new document or blank document when you're creating a new assignment. And the reason you want to do that is because if you borrow, if you will, or use an old document, it can contain, and often does contain, coding in the background that you can't see, and it may throw off your formatting. So the first thing you want to do in any MLA style formatted paper is go to the formatting, and you want to go to paragraph. So for me, and again, Microsoft Word and a Mac version, you go to the very top menu under format and you go to paragraph. And under paragraph, you're going to set the line spacing to double. Now, once you set the line spacing to double, and I'll give you a little preview here down at the bottom, and click OK, you never, ever change it back to single or half a space. So let me show you that in the sample paper here. Everything in MLA is double space. So double spacing between the heading lines, between the heading and the first line of the title in this case, between the main part of the title and the subtitle, and between the title itself and the opening paragraph, or double space between paragraphs, or double space between the regular paragraph and, in this case, a block indented quotation, right? So everything is double spaced, and just leave it that way. That is part of the simplicity of, what do you call it, of MLA style. Now there is an extra space you'll see right here between this image and the caption. I covered this in some detail in the how to avoid plagiarism video, if you had not seen that video lecture. But the reason this space exists is that it would look jarring to the eye if the caption and the end of this paragraph here, what we call an orphan paragraph, which is attached to the previous part up here in the previous page, if it was all jammed together. So that's the reason there's an extra space there. But if you go down to the works cited page, you'll see that, in fact, everything is double spaced. So that's the first thing you do in Microsoft Word is you, again, go to Tools, Format, and then Paragraph, double space, and OK. The next thing you do is you want to create a page number. And for me, on a Mac, in this version of Microsoft Word, it's Insert at the top there. And then you scroll down and it says Page Numbers. So you're inserting a page number. And as soon as you click this, it will create what's called a header. That is a kind of invisible section at the top or head of every page. Okay, so you got to tell it where you want it. And according to, it's giving you a choice here. You want it in the top right-hand corner, right? Because let's go back and look here. You want it in the top right-hand corner. So make sure it's top right and then say OK. And then it automatically puts the page number up there. Well, you're not done yet, because remember, you need to insert your surname. Okay, so at the top of every page is your surname or your last name. In this case, the student's last name is Orloff. So if you're John Doe, then you put Doe up there in the upper right-hand corner. And how do you do that? Well, you go to the number itself. You can see the cursor here. It's at the very beginning of the document, but you double click on the number itself, or click twice, and you'll see that invisible header marked with a kind of blue line. So right now the number 1 is highlighted. What you need to do are 2 things. You need to insert your surname, and you also need to change the font to the font that you are using in your essay. So there's only one style and size of font throughout. So you'll say, in this case, Doe and space. Make sure you put the space there because your name does not have a number. And then you just highlight all of the text, and then you go to your main ribbon or menu of home, and you select the font you want to use. So in this case, I will select Times New Roman 12, which is the common, normal academic writing font. And once you have done that, you can just click anywhere in the main part of the page, right? And now you'll see that it's kind of slightly grayed here with the surname and page number. That's because if you start typing, right, then the regular kind of font here is in, it's normal black bold. But again, we need the same font throughout the entire essay. So again, Times New Roman. And when I hit return here, right, it's going to hit me to the second line, or take me down to 2 lines below it, because we set everything in double space, right? So that is your name, my name, the assignment, and the due date. In this case, it's okay. And again, if you hit another return, and you can have the title. And if you have a subtitle, which is fine and often desirable, that of course needs to be centered, which is, the justification tabs up here at the top. So that's your basic, MLA style heading information, right? Which is featured here, what I just did. Now, the nice thing about the page numbering is that what this automatically does, the way that we did it, is it creates what we call sequential paging, or sequential pagination. So let's say I start typing, and I keep typing, and just so on down the line. And as soon as you get to the next page, it will automatically create page 2 for you, and so on. Now, please do not try to circumvent this, that is to not follow this page number, because it will actually show up in the Word document that you submit, that I will be able to see that you've not done it. In other words, if you try to do this, which some students do, I'm just going to get rid of this here for a second. So there's nothing there. So a lot of students don't know the page numbering command, and they will try to tab over to the right margin and put their name, right, and the page number. But what that ends up doing is, when you get to the second page, and you try to include it in the upper right hand corner again, it creates a spacing problem in the text itself. If you try to say, okay, Doe, right, then there's going to be a spacing problem above that here on the last or the previous page, and then a spacing problem in terms of the following page. So that if you notice here, right, that or maybe let me get the instruction out of the way here. So, this paragraph ends here, and then it goes to the next page, and this is automatically inserted. or if you have a paragraph here and then it continues to the next page, right? The paragraph right here, then you don't have to include extra spacing. And it just, will cause you a nightmare really in terms of your line, like here, right here, right? That the way that page numbering is supposed to work in the background is that it does not throw off your automatic double spacing throughout the entire text. Now, one final thing about line spacing and the text is, do you see how the works cited ends on a separate page here? In other words, the works cited, the essay ends here at about the middle of the fifth, or excuse me, middle of the sixth page. So it's roughly about a 5-page paper. Even though this says 6, we do not count, and this should be important for those of you who are planning to use images, graphs, pie charts, or anything else. We do not count this space. So everything that is taken up by this image or cartoon, this caption, and then this extra line spacing right below it, which if you look at the page is about, almost a third or quarter of the page, okay? So that, all of that at the top here does not count. I can't highlight it all together at one time, but all of that does not count toward your regular lines of typing and therefore pages. So the assignment says, right, a 3 double-spaced page paper, right? And notice it says 3 double-spaced pages of body text. The works cited page will always be listed on a separate page. So what I'm asking you to do, folks, is to type an essay that is at a minimum 3 double-spaced pages, and that does not include any charts or images or captions you include. Now, going back to the works cited page, notice again that it does not start right here at the bottom of the last page, but instead it always belongs on its own separate page. Again, this is just simple MLA formatting and APA as well, honestly. The way that you do that in Word is pretty simple. So let me go back here and say that I theoretically, typed in some information. I'm just filling up the lines here. Oh wait, I need to redo all of this because of the page numbers. Remember, I took this to show you, I took this off. We don't want to do that. We don't want to. So quick review of page number. You go to Insert, Page Number, Top, Right, okay. And it will, page number, top, right. Okay. Why is that not putting it on the right? I don't know. It's bizarre. So we need to, again, add our surname. Go make sure it's the same font as everything else you're using in the text. So in this case, it would be Times New Roman 12. And then click anywhere else on the page. The way that you get another page, if you will, out of Microsoft Word to get the what it called the works cited page on a separate page is you put it in what's called a page break. And that's simple to do. You simply go up here to insert again. So instead of page number, we want to break. And there are different kinds of breaks here. There are column breaks and section breaks if you have a really long like chapter or book. But we just simply want the first one. So page break. Now, what's important, I'm not going to click this yet, but what's important is wherever your cursor is where the page break will occur. And by page break, it means that the background coding is going to cause the document to always consider wherever your cursor is at the moment to be in the future an entirely separate page. So that no matter how much information you put down below here, right, that it will always force the new broken page, if you will, to a separate page, which is what you want. So notice that I have it like I finished my essay. In this case, it's only 3 lines, but you know what I'm saying. So once you have finished, you know, your final sentence or your final paragraph, you put your cursor at the end of that. So to visualize here, you would put your cursor right below workplace here. Okay, like right there. And then you would include the page break command, which is simply insert, break, page break. And now automatically you can see that page 2 occurs, right? So there's page 1, then there's page 2. And you want to do this, you know, fairly soon in your essay, and especially as soon as you have a source that you're going to need to document on the works cited page. So remember, I covered this in the How to Avoid Plagiarism video lecture. This is called citing your source. That is, you do it in the sentences and paragraphs. And this is called documenting your source. So the label here simply means here's a list presented alphabetically of works or sources that I have actually cited in the essay above. And again, citing is, you know, to mention the author and or page number, if, or, you know, it has a page number. So all of these are citations, right? So here it's just the page number, but we know who's saying it because the author begins with the author's name. So that's citation versus documentation. And it's good to fairly soon when you're typing your essay to include your works cited page, which was always going to be on a, you know, separate page as it shows. So like no matter how much you start typing, I'll just keep doing this until we get to the next page. And what's going to happen is, maybe I should zoom out to show you, is that as soon as we fill up, you know, with lines and sentences, as soon as we get to the next page, right, we're now continuing to type, but what it has done, it has now forced the works cited page to, in this case, page 3. Oops, page 3, right? Because we included earlier this insert, break, page break command. Okay. So that's documenting and how you get your paper to look like this, right? All right. Now going back to the essay itself, you're going to need to, of course, have smooth logical transitions after your thesis. whether we should or should not do X, Y, or Z. And notice the word sentence is underlined in every single instance. In other words, words like however, furthermore, next, secondly, thirdly, all of those, while serving as a transition, those are incredibly elementary and clunky. Imagine, you have a car, you have 4 tires. If one of your tires is flat, it, will get you where you need to go, but it's going to be clunk, 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 right? It's not smooth and rapid and effective. So what I'm trying to teach you in this course is not just how to argue and argue well, but how to write well, speak well as well. So you need an entire sentence that segues you from one paragraph to the next paragraph. And that transition sentence, and it can come at the end of the first paragraph, or it can be at the beginning of the next paragraph. So let me show you how this author does it. So here's the first paragraph. And she, in effect, lays out her thesis right here in this final, as it says here, thesis point. And her thesis is basically the benefits are outweighed by its costs. So she's siding with employees' right not to have their, at work stuff monitored by employers. But notice that she doesn't move to the next paragraph by simply going, the first problem is, employers monitor workers with unprecedented efficiency. And she's going to talk here in this paragraph about just how increasingly pervasive online monitoring of employees' work is, as well as just how quickly they're able to do it. So rather than say, first, or, the first point I want to make is, right, she has this entire sentence that segues her or moves her from the previous thing she had been talking about, which was, the in general surveillance of employees, right? Because she says, well, surveillance of employees is not a new phenomenon. So she's acknowledging that, it's not new. What is new, she's going to say, is that electronic surveillance allows employers to monitor workers with unprecedented efficiency. So that's in effect her transition sentence, right, and topic sentence. So this, you might say, is her topic sentence for this paragraph, but this dependent clause, right, moves her smoothly from the previous thing she had been talking about here about monitoring employees and electronic surveillance to this new paragraph. So here's another example. She says, another key difference between traditional surveillance and electronic surveillance is that employers can monitor workers' computer use secretly. So great, right? Because what she had just been talking about, right, of course, is the electronic surveillance. And notice she didn't say next or furthermore, comma, it's an entire sentence that sets her up for her being able to talk about the difference between the way it used to be and the way it is now, with very sophisticated tools like this program called Stealth, or Spectre Pro, excuse me. And this is something I need to point out that's different than our outline in our course. So notice off to the side here, it says, Orloff anticipates objections and provides sources for opposing views. This comes in, I believe it's paragraph 3, 1, 2, yeah, in the third paragraph rather than the second. But this is equivalent, what's happening here is equivalent to our, what I'm, fancily calling or titling refutation of the opposition. The opposition are your opponents, or the other side. Refutation is that rhetorical or fancy word for rejecting or refuting your opponents, right? And so you need to, you're not really arguing if you just give only your opinion, your side. You have to acknowledge that here's what my opponents say. Here's some examples of specifically what they think or say. However, here's why they're wrong. And so this is how it operates in this sample paper. Some experts have argued that the range of legitimate concerns justifies employee monitoring. Okay, so she's going to have an entire paragraph about why, this paragraph here, about why her opponents think that, hey, it's a good thing, helpful for us as employers to monitor our people. And then she could include this short little 2-sentence paragraph. By definition, a paragraph is 2 or more sentences. She could include it right after the over here, the 312. That is, she could make this entire long paragraph 1, but it is already kind of, as you can see, kind of long in itself. It's just a little over half a page. But notice that she acknowledges these concerns, and then she pivots, or she says a however, or in this case, a but right here. She says, these kinds of concerns should give employers in certain instances the right to monitor employee behavior. So she's acknowledging it. Okay, I get it. There is another side. However, or in her case, but, and yes, it is entirely fine, acceptable to begin a sentence with because or but. If you were ever told that you should never write a sentence begin with because or but, that isn't just completely wrong and not true. You want to do it sparingly. That is, you don't want to have every sentence begin with but. You can use however or nevertheless or although X, Y, or Z, right? You can construct sentences different ways. So after she acknowledges these concerns, okay, they have, their own legit ideas. However, or but, employers rushing to adopt surveillance programs may not be adequately weighing the effect of such programs can have on employee morale. So that kind of, reminds us of her thesis, which was, if you recall, that the benefits of surveillance are outweighed by its costs. And so, in particular, privacy and autonomy. And so that little transition paragraph there, sorry, that little transition paragraph here, right, leads us into the problems of employee morale, right? So that for us will again occur in paragraph 2, or it should in your essay. So, if you wanted to start talking about, let's say one I'm going to look at here, number 12, should public schools revise their history curriculum and their textbooks to include more thorough and accurate teaching of the causes and effect of slavery surrounding the Civil War? And you could say, yes, they should, no, they shouldn't, or they should to this degree, or, how so? So remember, should, that means you have a question to answer. So let's say, you wanted to begin with a quotation by James Baldwin or another famous African-American writer about race or history, or you wanted to give a statistic about how many people of color don't graduate high school or don't go to college and that sort of thing, or you want to give a personal anecdote about yourself and your education, or someone or growing up with someone a sibling perhaps, And then you give your thesis, which is the topic, right? Like in this case, should we or should we not revise the history curriculum to more explicitly and thoroughly teach slavery in this country? And your point of view would be, let's say, yes, we should. We should because of this reason, that reason, and another reason. Like we should do it because it creates a more aware population in terms of voting issues. Notice I didn't use the word woke because I want you all to use, college level diction. Not that the word woke is wrong, it's just you can use a more accurate, precise word. Another reason could be that we should teach that history because it is the truth, right? That is factual information. And if you don't teach it, then you're susceptible to having students learn misinformation or disinformation, like we've been seeing in the past few years recently, unfortunately. And a potential third reason could be that we need to do it because we don't want to repeat the horrors of the past, right? That is, to forget the past is to condemn yourself to the future of kind of an eternal recurrence of problems. So whatever three reasons you choose, those three reasons will be laid out very specifically in these three body paragraphs with evidence or facts or quotations from people that support each one of those ideas. Now, the transition will be something like, well, who would disagree? Who would oppose, right? If we're looking again at 12, right here in public schools, who would oppose, or who has opposed or continues to oppose the revision of teaching history in schools? Well, currently there are a lot of people that are balking at this idea. There's something called the 1619 project. I don't know if you all have heard about this, but it was, well, let me just show you. Sorry. Hannah Nicole Jones, or Nicole Hannah Jones, is that right? Yeah, sorry. I had it mixed up there. So she's in our, what do you call it, our Google Drive. There's some images of her. Let's see, under the SA1 folder. So there she is. She is a pretty powerful journalist and has worked for the New York Times, Washington Post, and she recently was kind of, you can go find her on Twitter at in Hannah Jones, right? She goes by Ida Bay Wells, which is a riff off of Ida Wells. I don't know if you all know who that was, but she won Journalist of the Year. So Ida B. Wells was the first African-American female journalist, right? And she won that, award for Journalist of the Year, named after Wells. But anyway, my point is that she has been, right, you can see here, involved in and helped started something called the 1619 Project. And what it is it's, right, like it clearly explains, a reexamination of the legacy and ongoing issues of slavery, right? But as soon as she and others who said that we should teach this kind of thing in public schools, there were a bunch of people who, had a, backlash, if you will, from it. So like here, reaction from historians. And one of the problems with, this topic is that you have parents who are in control of these school boards. They elect the school board council and superintendent and so on. And if they are fundamentally racist, then they don't want their kids being taught we might call hard history of slavery. And speaking of which, inside of this folder of essay 1, there's a document you might want to check out called Teaching Hard History here. It's a PDF document, but I can use it on my laptop easier. And it's from the Southern Poverty Law Center. If you don't know the Southern Poverty Law Center, they're involved, they're based in Atlanta. They seek out and try to obliterate and even challenge with legal funding civil rights right here, hate groups, racism, civil rights. So they put out this document called Teaching Hard History a while back. And again, this whole PDF file is in your folder, and you can quote from it or paraphrase, use it as a source. And here's a nice quote from Baldwin, famous African-American novelist, short story writer, and essayist. And he says, "History is not the past, it is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history." And people who don't understand that or understand it but don't want to acknowledge it, right, are people who would disagree with you or be your opponents. And what the 1619 Project is trying to do is trying to, say, look, we really do need to teach people about slavery in the right way so everyone is on the same page and we don't have these, huge perceptual discrepancies about, what the slavery was about or how it went down. So this document here, it was published in 2018, and what they did is they took 10 key concepts about slavery. Okay, so these key concepts here on page 16, and they said, okay, to what degree are these 10 key concepts being taught in particularly high school, junior high and high school, middle school, high school, especially high school? Like, is it being taught that slavery was practiced by Europeans prior to the arrival of Americas was important, right? Or is it being taught that slavery and the slave trade were central to the development and growth of the economy? And so if those ideas are not being taught and in a kind of transparent way, then of course, people graduate from high school and go on to college. They think that it wasn't a big deal or it wasn't true. There's misinformation. And I'm just going to give you an example after having seen those key concepts of what they did was they looked at, in terms of teachers and students, textbooks, actually, is it in the textbook, right? And, this issue here of what was it central to the development, the growth of economy? Well, only barely 58% of teachers, only barely over half, were actually teaching that, right? And 46%, less than half of students actually knew that it was central to the development of the economy. And then the textbooks, did they include that? Well, you know, not even quite a third were including that. So they went sort of, if you remember this, hopefully you've seen this in the past, the slaveholding states down here at the bottom. So they went sort of, not every single state, but state by state, like here's Alabama, right? Florida, California, and so on. I'm just going to go to Louisiana because, you know, Gramling's in Louisiana. Many of you are Louisiana students. And I think I passed it already. Maybe I did. And what they're, here it is. So says here that Louisiana's social studies, therefore history classes, right? Grade level expectations were last revised in 2011. So here it is, 2021, and it's unlikely that those expectations have been revised in a decade. I remember this document was published in 2018. They first mentioned slavery in the 5th grade when students are asked to, quote, explain and give examples of how Native Americans, Europeans, and free and enslaved Africans adapted to the living in the New England colonies. What? So the adapted to living sounds like, you know, oh, we're moving to the north, so we have to wear coats and parkas now. You know, different kind of money exchange system. There's mentions nothing about, other than this word enslaved, mentions nothing about forced labor and brutality. And then at the end of this section on Louisiana, it says, missing entirely in Louisiana's social studies courses are all but one of the, you know, remember there are 10. So the only one that is actually being taught is the first one. So all of the other 10 are not being taught in Louisiana to both, you know, white and black and, you know, children of color. So is it any surprise that, you know, when people graduate high school, they have a very kind of distorted view if they've grown up in a community or household or family that has no connection or ties or knowledge of slavery, or even worse, they deny it actually happened or it's being distorted. So that was the impetus for asking this question here: should public schools revise their history curriculum and their textbooks? And you could say, yes, they should. Well, okay, so how though? How should it happen? You know, what should they include? How should they do it? And again, you can use any of this information in this document to help you argue that. So there's Sojourner Truth. All right. I think I want to say that's it for now. I'm not going to be able to go through every single one of these topics, right? But you can certainly find information in our file folder of, you know, essay number 1, like I showed you. But there are other places to look for solid sources, and they're not necessarily on, what do you call it? They're not necessarily on a Google search, right? Like you can do, you know, history, racism. You can do that, and you'll get stuff like this. That is, you know, USA Today or CBS News articles that are okay, you know, because they're news, actual news sources. USA Today is a newspaper, CBS News is a broadcasting outlet. But what you really want to do, folks, because if you remember watching the What is Rhetoric PowerPoint or video lecture, You want to use the best high-powered sources as possible to convince your audience that you know what you're talking about. So what you want to do is you want to go to the Grambling library homepage. And on this homepage, there are two links right here, these first two links, the electronic databases and the Lewis library databases. The first one, electronic databases, is where you have to start. And it's this long alphabetical list here. You can see all the letters up here at the top. You just click a letter and go straight to it. But this long alphabetical list of individual databases. And there are three in the following order that I recommend that you search, not just for this essay, but all of our essays and in all other of your courses in which you have to, do research or write a report or paper. So the first one is called EBSCOhost, all databases. I'll come back to this in a moment. The next one, some of you may be familiar with, is called Jstor, which stands for Journal Storage. And then the last one is called ProQuest. And some of you may already have used this in high school and other places because it contains a lot of information. So in that order of EBSCOhost, Jstor, and ProQuest. So I'm currently not on campus at the moment. So when I click this link here of EBSCOhost databases, it's going to require me to do what's called a remote authentication login. And back on the library homepage here, there's a little paragraph or so about remote authentication. Some of you already know this. If you already know this, just bear with me, but many of you may not. Anyone who is a current active faculty, staff, or student can remotely access these databases. It's in part what your student services fees is for. And what they're telling you is that you change the G in your G number to a 9, because when you get to this little login screen here for the first time, it doesn't accept for an ID any letters. It only takes numbers. So think of taking the letter G and turning it upside down like a 9, if you will. And then the default password is the last 4 digits of your G number. So they're saying here, if your G number is 9, because it's not a G, it's a 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then your password would be 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Pretty simple. So this is for anyone out of state, or you're not on the Grambling campus, or in another scenario, because if you're on campus, you will automatically be taken to whatever database. And that's a good thing because it's speedy, but you need to also know how to remotely access or authenticate. So going back to the EBSCOhost databases here, if I click on this link, it's going to take me to that authentication page. Remember, you don't put in your G, you put in a 9, right? Can't even remember my. Of course. Why? Because I missed the zeros, sorry. Anyhow, so when you first log in, you ought to go in and change your password, as I have done, because yes, I want to continue to the site. So what you're going to be presented with when you click EBSCOhost all databases is this sort of dashboard page. And don't be thrown by it, because these are not the the links that I'm talking about. You want to, one more time, click this link right here. Sort of like peeling an onion. There's another layer you have to go to. So once you click this a second time, you'll be presented here with this huge trove of individual databases listed alphabetically. So again, part of the reason American political periodicals, right? Part of the reason that your student services fees may seem high is because we, Grambling, or every university, yearly pays subscriptions to all of these different databases. Once you're inside EBSCOhost, I want you to click this one right here, the Academic Search Complete. So if I can just increase the size here, show you a little bit. It contains multidisciplinary, so art and theater and history and biology and chemistry and nursing and business and computer science, so multidisciplinary, with full text databases of more than 8,500 full text periodicals. That's pretty huge, right? And full text means you don't have to, like I do back in the day, go to the physical library. You can get the entire article there. And it includes more than 7,300 peer-reviewed journals. So this term right here, peer-reviewed, that is really important. That's what separates any sort of simple Google search that any human can do from you as an educated college person, that you have access to the top-notch leading experts, because peer-reviewed means that something is not published until experts in the field, peers, review it and give their okay that this is solid research, so we should put it out there. So once you click the Academic Search Complete link, you'll be presented with the search page, okay? And you always want in a database to be in the, as we are here, in the advanced search page. The basic search page is one single search field here, and that's not helpful because it's in the advanced page where you can not only add fields and terms, if you will, but you can down here you can select Boolean operators and the discipline and the year and so on. But so let's say I use those terms, we use before history, racism, curriculum. Well, that's probably too much, actually, now that I think about it. Let's do it field by field, because what you're telling the database is I want this word and this word, because you could say or this word or not this word. I want this word and this word, and let's say another one in either the subject or in the title. So you can go over here and say, I want it in subject term, subject term, subject term. So I want each one of these three terms to appear as a subject term. And let's see what we get here. So we got 11, which seems like a little bit, but you don't want a whole, 200 or 300 to sift through. And typically what they will do is put things in terms of relevance, but you can change that here. You can say, okay, I want the newest one first. That is in terms of publication, new. And it's a current 2021 piece in what's called early American literature. And it's about, in this case, the racist history of surrounding Thanksgiving, right? So early American, right? Think of, we were taught, the Pilgrims, but In this case, it's about negative stereotyping of Native Americans and, the food. Here's one about, social work and human services regarding Black males, right? So this is where these terms appeared. And if you want just full text, the entire thing, you can just click this limit here. Say out of these 11 sources, there are 8. There are 8 that are full text, right? And when you click the PDF full text, you will get the entire document, right? And this is from the Journal of Human Behavior and Social Environment. And what I would recommend you do is to download this, right? And create a folder for SA1 or whatever project you're doing, and then download it to that folder. The reason why is I'm just going to download mine to the desktop because, I'm not writing the essay, but just for ease of use with you. But I'm just going to say, this is about police shooting. The reason it's better to download it is, well, several reasons, but one, you create the ability on your computer to refer back to the document, if you need to add another paraphrase or quote. But you also have the ability, once you have it as a PDF file, which you cannot really do very well in the database, you have the ability to search. So generally speaking, these are all OCR or optical character readable documents, right? If you can highlight text like this, that means you can also search in a document like this. So, our search terms were history, curriculum, and racism, right? So let's just see where, if at all, curriculum, if I spell it correctly, occurs. So notice here, I just started typing the word that I'm looking for. The word current, of course, appears, but then 2 different versions occur. So curriculum is singular, just like, an alum is singular for fraternity, and alumnus is, or alumni, excuse me, is plural. So curricula is plural, meaning, more than one curriculum. So there's a total of 5 that might be relevant to what you're talking about. And so right away, you get to pinpoint exactly where, in this case, the authors investigated national law enforcement curriculum and found no courses on spirituality among academic programs, which is kind of, if you think about it, if you're trying to connect to, the African-American community, and they're deeply, as it says here, deeply spiritual, at least historically, then that might be a problem in this case of police academies, right? So yeah, again, download the PDF file, and if it's something you can't use, it's not a source that's going to be useful for your SA1, then don't worry about it and go back to your list. So that was the first one. That is, this is called, again, Academic Search Complete. The next one I recommend to you is Jstor, and I'm going to go back out to the electronic databases link. Just click on the letter J right here, and it'll take you right to the J section. Jstor is similar in terms of the way that you navigate it, but it's not as current information as the EBSCO and other databases. And so the advanced search, right? You always want, remember, this is just one single field, means you're on the basic search page. So click advanced search. And like the previous one, you can always add fields, search fields. Let's do history. And we want it, in this case, probably not in, certainly not the author, not in the title. I doubt if we select title, I doubt there would be any, but more likely in the abstract, where an abstract is a summary of information. And we got 4 results as opposed to 11. So, okay, there are 4 fewer, but is there something in here we can use, right? And if we look at the sort by date, right? The newest, the last one was 2021, right? And this one, the newest one is 2016. So like I said, you know, it's not as useful perhaps in terms of currency, but it's good, Jstor, because it includes a lot of older and important works as well. The final one that I mentioned to you is called ProQuest, not the final, the third one. And it has a broader coverage than the other 2. And includes here, as you can see, you know, dissertation, theses, historical newspapers, and so on. So there are going to be a lot more, I would assume, hits in this. And again, this is the basic search page you're presented with, but just click the advanced search tab and you can always add fields. So history. And we need to choose the fields, like where do we want them? How about subject headings, right? Anywhere in the subject heading. And let's see. So we got 20, so quite a few more than the other 2. Oh, well, excuse me, no, we got 200, and they're just showing you the first page of 20. So quite a bit, right? And you're going to want full text so you can actually find the article, and then you can limit that 200 down to 177. Then let's say we want peer reviewed. That is really the best, you know, most expert sources. Now we cut down to 34. And then let's say, how about in the last 12 months? And now we got 1, right? Oh, yeah, I don't know if you guys have heard about this issue of critical race theory being a problem taught in schools. It's dovetailing with that 1619 project that I mentioned with Nicole Hannah-Jones. Critical race theory has been around for a long time, but there are now people balking, or, you know, like resisting the notion that we should do that. So, you know, you can ask yourself, if you read this summary or abstract, is this going to help me in my essay 1, where I'm talking about, in this case, revising the history curriculum, right? So, yeah, that's kind of what I expect, folks, for you for essay 1. If you haven't already started choosing a topic, please do so. There are quite a few to choose from, and you just choose one. Remember, you cannot just simply say we should do X, Y, or Z. You need to explain it in detail to your audience and use sources and evidence to back it up, which is the entire point of, citing your sources in the text and then documenting those sources fully and completely on the works cited page. All right, well, if you have any questions, inbox me in Canvas. Hope you all remain well and take care.